Welcome back to the channel, Hobby1 Kenobi here. In this video, I'll be starting to build the F-101B in 1/48 scale by Kitty Hawk. The Kitty Hawk kit is one that I attempted several years ago but never finished. The build was nearly complete, waiting for its first coat of paint, but it just sat around for years. I decided to purchase the kit again and start fresh. Once I opened the new box, I realized that the plastic was very different. The first kit was molded in a hard, brittle-feeling plastic, while this later mold was cast in standard gray plastic with crisper panel lines and rivets. I could already tell that the fit would be improved and that I would have a much better time building this kit overall. My plan with this build is to depict the famous Canadian Lynx Voodoo. This aircraft was featured on the box art of the old monogram kit. I always knew that if I built a Voodoo, it would have to be in this beautiful, iconic scheme. Alright, let's get started. Work begins with the intakes. There are some pin marks that need to be filled with CA glue, while others are just shallow enough to simply be scraped away. I prefer using a scalpel for scraping work. Before the two halves of the intakes are joined, a slat is set in place. I recall from my first attempt at this kit that one slat didn't reach both surfaces of the intake very well. I'm not noticing any issues at the moment, but I'll have to wait until the intake is installed in the wings to see if further filling is necessary. One aspect I do like about this kit is that the fuselage halves are molded as upper and lower sections. From earlier research, I knew that one of the two vents on the starboard side of the fuselage was in the wrong shape. I will carve out the vent to the correct shape and replace each of the vent slats, while the correct vent on the port side will be thinned out and opened up. Typically, thinning plastic is done by scraping with a scalpel and sanding away material with a coarse sanding stick. I got impatient, however, and used my cordless Dremel instead. Big mistake. The Dremel melted the vent detail. I ended up carving out the vent altogether and adding plastic strips to replicate the slats. Once that was done, I scraped away the formation light panels, 3 on each side of the aircraft. Next, I airbrushed the interior of the intakes white, painted, and attached the engine fans. No glue was needed since the fit was snug due to the paint layers. Now I was ready to tackle the incorrectly shaped vent on the port side. The circular opening should actually be an oblong pill shape. I started by drilling holes, then sliced between them with the blade to remove material. Once the shape looked correct, I filled the old vent with CA glue and sanded it flush. Now came the tricky part. I cut small slats from thin plastic strip. Instead of carefully measuring each piece, I quickly cut many small strips around to the right size. That way I had plenty of options and could pick the closest fit. I kept Tamiya extra thin cement handy, first dry fitting a piece, then applying a dab of cement and placing the strip at the right angle. The work was tedious, but worth it. Later, I will add one very thin strip to run horizontally across the slats. Next, I glued the forward positions of the intakes to the air scoops. While those dried, I moved to the fuselage air brakes. The inner detail is nice, but the molding process left several sink marks on the outer surface. I simply filled the dimples with CA glue and sanded the surface smooth. Then I encountered the rings that fit inside the burner cans. One was misshapen due to short shot molding. Thankfully, having extra pieces from my earlier kit really came in handy. That first kit also had a misshaped ring, but between the two sets I had 2 good ones. As the intakes came together, I found that the slats still came up short of the intake surface. After considering several options, I decided the best fix was to add a square styrene strip. I dry fitted it against the slat, trimmed it with a scalpel, and glued it in place with CA. I then applied a small amount of Vallejo putty, which is easy to clean up with a moistened Q-tip. I built up and smoothed several layers until I achieved a seamless shim. Finally, I sprayed the bare plastic with a light coat of white paint, being careful to avoid overspray on the engine fans. After all of that, it was time to start on the cockpit. There were 2 prominent pin marks on the rear bulkhead, which I covered with styrene squares. I painted the cockpit with a mix of Tamiya grays, then added a gloss coat for the wash. My wash is a usual mix of Turpenoid and Winsor & Newton Artist oils to make a dark gray sludge. I added a slight red tint to match the gray found on the 3D decals. After the wash dried, I removed most of it with Q-tips, then sealed everything with Tamiya Flat Clear. The Kitty Hawk kit includes photo-etched control panels, which aren't terrible but lack detail. I used Babibi 3D decals, which are perfect for this kit. Since there were no molded on switches or knobs, nothing would need to be scraped away. This was my first time using Babibi 3D decals, and I really liked how they looked. Unlike Edward Look decals, there was no pixelation. These, along with the Quinta, are now my go-to 3D decals. Someday I'll try out the Kellic brand, which I believe is from ResiKit. Let me know in the comments if you used these particular 3D decals and tell me what you think. Next, I attached the nose gear wheel well to the cockpit tub, closed the fuselage, and added plenty of nose weight before attaching the nose cone. Then it was on to the wings. The flaps had gaps that looked way out of scale. I glued them to the wings, filled the gaps with CA glue, and re-scribed the lines. Overall, they turned out well, but if I could redo it, I'd probably just lower the speed brakes instead. If you would like to purchase this kit or any of the tools that I use in these videos, go to the description and click on the links. Any purchases will benefit this channel greatly. Thank you. In one case, the flap wasn't level with the wing. To fix it, I glued in plastic sheet, filled and sanded until it was flush. Next, I carved out holes in the air scoops. I started by scraping a thin line in the center, then gradually removed more material. It's tedious work, but again, I think the result is worth it. With the wings ready, I attached them to the rear fuselage, and then joined the forward fuselage. This step was tricky because of the nose weight. I felt that simply applying Tamiya extra thin to the seam might not be strong enough. So I reinforced the joint by gluing plastic strips inside on each side. I added a few spots of CA glue for extra strength, then closed it up with Tamiya extra thin. This extra bit of surface area should keep the model solid. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps our channel out. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you would like to purchase this kit or any of the tools that I use in these videos, go to the description and click on the links. Any purchases will benefit this channel greatly. Thank you.